Thank you. And okay, hello everybody, and welcome to today's class. My name is Birgit Koopsen, and I'm a brand ambassador for Gelli Arts, and I'm teaching this class today about creating your own texture tools and stamps using hot glue. And Dominique is here. Dominique is from Gelli Arts, and she will help out with any links that you might need to products that I'm using, or maybe to videos that I refer to. So she will help you out, and I will try to keep an eye on the chat and answer questions. But if I don't have time to do that, then Dominique is also watching the chat and might ask me to answer any of your questions. So feel free to ask your questions whenever they come up. Okay, so let's go to my work surface and start doing some gel printing. Or first, we're going to make the tools to create, to do the gel printing. And today we're going to use hot glue, and I have a mini hot glue gun here. You will not find the exact same one at Michael's probably, because this is a European one, and that doesn't work in the US and the other way around. But I have a mini one here, and I prefer to use the mini one because of the finer lines that you can create. I also do have a bigger one, like this one, that has like a really thick glue stick here, but I think this one is way too big to draw with, so I just go with the small one that has like the tiny glue stick. So my glue gun is warming up right now, and I'm just going to show you a couple of these glue stamps, hot glue stamps that I made before. So these are older ones. As you can see, they have been used. So you can do all kinds. You can draw whatever you want and create a texture with it. I really like to go with organic shapes, mostly leaves, flowers, or just random circles to create an organic print. But you could also do butterflies, or you could do a zigzag pattern or cross pattern, or whatever pattern you like. Or you could even draw text and use it as text stamps. So what I like to do is create my design on a craft sheet like this. If you don't have a craft sheet, then you can use a baking sheet. Usually they are black, and you can use them in your oven, like an oven sheet that you use instead of baking paper. That works really well too. Or you can use actual baking paper like this to create your design on. The only thing that is important is that the surface that you create your design on will release the glue when it's cooled down. So it should not stick to the surface where you create your design on. And what I like to do is create a design and then put a piece of just regular cardboard or chipboard on top, place it on top, and then let the glue cool down, and then you can remove it from your non-sticky surface, and then you have your texture tool. The downside of doing it this way is that you kind of push down the glue, which gives you in some areas wider lines, so they don't stay as thin as you drew them. But the positive thing about that, or the good thing about that, is that your texture or your stamp is evenly thick everywhere. And when you do gel printing, you want your texture plate or your stamp to touch the gel plate everywhere. So if you draw straight onto the cardboard, you get different heights depending on how much glue there is. And then when you turn it around and you use it on your gel plate, it will not touch your gel plate everywhere and therefore not pick up your paint everywhere. So you can try both, and you can so you can experience the difference of creating the texture straight onto the cardboard or doing it on a non-sticky surface first. But I think my little glue gun is hot, so I can start drawing. And I usually just start and draw just like this. I don't draw a sample first, but I will show you a way to do that too before I turn off my glue gun. But I just very loosely create a shape. And of course you have to make sure that you put the cardboard on top of that before it cools down. So it needs to be still hot when you put the cardboard on top, because otherwise the cardboard will not stick to your shape. But this is like a real quick one, and I'm just loosely going to put this on top and lightly, very lightly push it down, just to make sure that that my cardboard or my chipboard touches the glue everywhere. And now it needs to cool down completely, because if I would just pick it up now while it's still hot, it will still stick to the craft sheet, and I will just tear it all apart. And so it's really, really important that your glue is like completely cooled down before you pick this up. But if you feel uncomfortable drawing an image right away on the craft sheet before when using your hot glue, you can also create a design first. So you could draw anything on paper. For instance, I'm just going to do some circles, a very simple and easy design, but just to show you how it's done. So I want to do some circles, and this is what I want to create. And now the baking paper comes in handy, because instead of using my craft sheet, I will then create on the sheet of baking paper. But I can put this down and then use my heat gun and just trace the lines that are underneath. So I'm just going to glue it, adhere it to my surface. Try to keep it in place. I'm not sure if the tape will really stick to the baking paper, as it is a little bit greasy, but that's also the reason why it will release the hot glue. So we'll just leave that to cool down a little bit more. And now I'm just going to use my glue gun and follow the lines that I have been drawing. And of course, with hot glue, you will never get like a perfect image or a perfect pattern. There will always be thicker and thinner areas. You will get these like threads, little thin threads between two shapes. But that is, of course, the charm of creating textures like this. If you want perfect textures, then you should just buy them ready-made instead of making them yourself with a hot glue gun. And And let me see, is this one big enough? Now my cardboard isn't big enough. Okay, I'm going to use a bigger one and just cut some off later. So I'm going to put this on top. And then there's also yet another way to do it, and I will show you that too. But first, let me see if this one came off quite nice, as you can see. Sometimes the glue is not completely sticking to the cardboard, or there are some areas that are loose or kind of come up. I then just take some liquid adhesive and put a little bit of it underneath to make sure that it really sticks to the cardboard. I think here's a little bit that's not glued to the chipboard, but if it's not coming off when I gel print, I can just leave it like this. But I could also put a little bit of matte medium or any liquid glue underneath to stick it down. But what if you want to do a larger piece and you don't have enough time to do the entire piece in one go, because then the first part is already cooled down before you are ready to put your cardboard on top. Then you want to build up your texture in stages. What you can do, and again, I'm just going to use very simple circle shapes just to show you, but now I want them to be flat. So I want the same look as I have with this one, with the flat surface, but I want to build up a bigger stamp. So what I can do is I'm just going to start here in the middle of my cardboard and do as much as I can do while my glue is still hot. And then when I think that it's taking too long and I can't continue working on it, I'm just going to pick it up and put it on my craft sheet like this. Now when it's cooled down, I can take it off, continue working on the shape and put it back on my craft sheet until I have my entire design ready. So let me see if this one is cooled down enough. I'm just going to turn it around and see if the baking sheet comes off, and it does, as you can see. And again, a really nice texture that I can use on my gel plate. And I'm just going to use my scissors and cut it a little bit smaller, because if you have too much cardboard around your texture, then you don't have a good feel of where exactly you're printing, in which area, and how much you need to push or rub on your texture when you're working with your gel plate. So it's better to make the area around your texture small. So this can be put aside. And let me see if this is coming off already. So here you can see that it's not coming off like very easily. So that means that it's probably still a little bit warm and sticky to the surface. So I have to be a little bit more patient and wait a little bit longer before I pull it off. And usually you can also feel it through the sheet. There we go. Okay, so here are my first 3 circles, and I want to create a bigger pattern. So now I'm just going to continue working on it. And I could go on doing this to create a texture plate that is as big as my gel plate if I wish. And now I'm just going to put it down again like this. And it will be evenly flat as the area that's already there, because I could never push it any deeper than what's already there and already cooled down. So once this is cooled down and I pick it up, it will be the same height as the area that was already there. So I can just put this aside for a moment to cool down and get out my gel plate. So today I'm going to use my 5x7 inch gel plate, but that's just because that's a nice size on the screen, and you can do it, of course, on any gel plate you like. And here's my gel plate, and I always tell people, but when I teach I hardly ever show, but I always say that I don't clean my gel plate between sessions. Because I like it when the leftover paint of the previous session is showing up in my new prints. And usually before I start teaching, I do clean my gel plate. So I usually start with a clean gel plate. And I thought, why not just do as I say and start with a gel plate that already has some leftover paint from a previous session. So what you do with these textures is basically the same as any texture plate or any stamp. It removes paint from the plate, creating a texture in your paint. And I have to say, the more you use them, the better they work. So the first print, or maybe the first 2 or 3 prints that you do with a new texture, the texture will pick up not as much paint as it will do later on, because the paint simply adheres better to a layer of acrylic paint, dried acrylic paint that's already there, than to the clean hot glue. So the first couple of prints are usually not the best ones, although when you go for organic background prints, then a lot of prints are good enough to work with, right? I mean, I don't get a lot of prints that I really can't use. Usually all of my prints can be used in some way. And if not, then I consider them just not done. And then I will just add another layer until it's good enough to work with. So I hardly ever will throw away a gel print, because you can always add more layers on top until you're satisfied with what you have. So I'm going to print on the Recollections white cardstock paper, which is from Michaels, and I really like this cardstock because it's so smooth. It's as smooth as a regular copier paper. And I also really like working on copier paper because it has no texture, and it really picks up paint from the plate really well. So if I just go for, if I want to create a collage paper, for instance, I often will use just regular copier paper, the thinnest copier paper I can get, because that's really nice to use as collage paper. But if I want to use it for backgrounds for my art in my art journal, or to create cards or something like that, I like to have a little bit heavier paper, like this one. So this is available at Michaels. But I also really like to print on tissue paper. Like, this is the kind of tissue paper that comes in a shoebox. So when you buy shoes, then usually there is some tissue paper inside. And this is the kind of tissue paper that came from a shoebox. You can also buy tissue paper. I can only say the thinner the tissue paper, the better. It is perfect for collage, because when you glue it down in your on your background with a matte medium, the areas where there's no paint will turn translucent, and it will look as if you printed straight onto your background. You will hardly see that you put the collage paper on top, but I can do a print on that also. Let me see if this is probably cooled down enough too. There we go. So as you can see, there's no difference in height or in texture of the circles that I put on in the second session. It's exactly the same as in the first session. So you can, as I said, make it as big as you want. So I can imagine that you want to do a butterfly and you want to do details in the wings of the butterfly, that it would be way too much work to do it in one go. And that might stress you out. And of course, then this is a way better way to do it and just work in stages.
Birgit, can I interrupt you for 1 second? We got two questions.
Absolutely.
Same one.
Absolutely.
So it is, if we make greeting cards, is there any advantage to print on the folded card directly, or print on a paper, then add to the folded card?
Well, it depends a little bit on what you what effect you want, because what I really like is when I have a card, and let me just see if I have one here on my I think I have one here. What I really like is when you have a card that you have like a little frame around around your print or your stamped image or whatever you're using on your card. So in that matter, it's easier and to print on a loose sheet of paper, because then you can adjust the paper to the size of the folded card, and you can make that little frame around it. Also, what if you're not satisfied with your print and you want it to be a nice print because you want to send it, right, when you do a greeting card? So it's a little bit of a shame when you printed it already on your folded card. I think it's better to have it on loose paper, and then if you don't like it enough, you can still use it for collage material or in your art journal or whatever, but then you don't have to waste that card. So personally, I would print it on loose paper and then apply it to a folded card later. But of course, you could totally do the printing on the folded card directly if you want to.
Thank you for answering that.
Of course, no problem.
One other question.
Yes.
Do you notice any difference in the quality of the stamps with different brands of glue?
No, not really. I do see a difference when some glues are easier to work with than others, like they come out of that glue gun easier or more fluid, or I don't know exactly how to say it, but we don't have the real, like the glues for crafting. Like I noticed on the Michael's website that there are even glues in all kinds of colors and stuff like that. I just go to the how do you call it, the hardware store, and get the hot glue they have there, and it's there in 2 sizes and only in white, and that's it. And it works, and it's not like the working on the gel plate is different when, for instance, if I go to another hardware store that has their own brand, it's not like those stamps don't work as well on my gel plate as one from another hardware store. So no, I don't really see a difference there. Okay, let me get my glues. No, my paints, my glue. I already had my glue. I'm going to go for my paints, and as usual, I will be using Winsor & Newton and Liquid Text Basics. And maybe I can also add in some golden. I have all kinds of paints here. I also have Deco Art paints. I have some Amsterdam paints. So I have a lot of different paints here that I like to work with. And do I prefer one over the other? Not really. I usually only go for the color. So if I like the Liquitex yellow better than the Winsor & Newton yellow, then I will go for the Liquitex. But I'm pretty easy on the paints I use. I know that there are people that really want to work with the golden because it's an open paint, and it gives you a lot of working time if you want to do stuff on your gel plate, and it doesn't dry quickly on the gel plate. So some people prefer that. I actually rather have my paint dry fast on the gel plate because I want to move on and move on and move on. And if my paint dries on the gel plate, I will just use another wet layer to pull it. But there are definitely advantages of using an open paint. But I'm not a very patient person. So if I have to sit around and wait for the paint to dry because I want that for a certain technique, then I would not prefer to use the golden paint.
Very good. We have Kathy. She is wondering if you've ever tried making a stamp on a firm cardboard tube to act like a roller.
That's funny that you're asking, because I saw one of those tubes in my drawer this afternoon, and I was thinking, oh, that might be an idea, but I have never done it. So I would have to think about how do I get that that surface being evenly flat all around the tube. But I suppose that I could do it like the one that I showed here. You could do it in stages and just do a small strip, let the glue dry, and then do the next strip until you have covered the entire tube. So I don't see a reason why that would not work. And I actually think that's a really great idea, and I might actually try that tomorrow. But yeah, questions like that, it's really nice when you ask questions like that, because that inspires people to try stuff. And I haven't done obviously everything yet also, so I really like getting ideas like that. But also I always say, when you have questions like that, just try. I mean, what is the worst thing that can happen? That you have to throw away a cardboard tube and a little bit of hot glue, or that you have to throw away a sheet of paper because you ruined your print or something like that. There's not a lot you can do on your gel plate that will actually ruin your gel plate. So even with trying products on the plate or techniques on the plate, I'm always like, oh, you have a great idea, just try it, So yeah, you don't have to be too gentle on your gel plate. It looks very delicate, but it really isn't. The only thing that I would not recommend using on the gel plate is heat. So I would not use a heat gun on my gel plate, although I sometimes am tempted to do so because of waiting time. Let me see. I want a nice pink that actually is working. There we go. So, as always, I have my cleanup paper here at the side and my brayer. And what I really like to do when using these is to not completely cover my plate with paint, but do like only half of the plate. And I have to make sure that I don't use too much paint, because the thing is, it is not like, for instance, rubber. If you have like a rubber stamp, that picks up a lot of paint from the plate. This is not picking up like a lot paint from the plate. So you have to make sure that you don't have too much paint, because then you can't pick up enough to actually create an open space. But what I really like is then to put down the texture again next to the paint in the open area, and also create texture there. And as I said, what I like about these hot glue stamps is the organic feel. So I'm also very randomly stamping and putting paint back down on the plate, and hope to get a print that has a feel as if there are like a lot of leaves whirling around, and create an organic print. So because I use so little paint, and although it is enough to transfer a little bit of that paint to this open area, these lines are going to dry really quickly, which means that if I would put paper on top of it right now, only half of the paint would come off, because part of the paint is already dry, and then you can't pick up dried paint from the plate, like not straight from the plate. If this is completely dry and I put a piece of paper on it, no paint will come off. It will stay on the plate. So the best thing to do now is to wait until it's completely dry. And then I'm going to use a new layer of paint to pick this up. What I can then also do is add another color. I can decide to use white paint to pick up the paint. I can decide to use a totally different color to pick up the paint, but I could even decide to use a matte medium, like for instance, Liquitex matte medium, or Deco Art matte medium, to pick up the paint from the plate, because a matte medium basically is acrylic paint without the pigments. So it works kind of the same as an acrylic paint, which means that you can use it on your gel plate the same way that you would use an acrylic paint. The only thing is that the matte medium is like really thin, thinner than the soft body acrylic paint that I'm printing with, which means that my layer of matte medium needs to be even thinner than when I would use acrylic paint, because otherwise I would just only pick up the matte medium and not the dried paint, unless I leave everything on the plate, including the paper, until everything is dry. Because if you put a wet layer of paint on your gel plate and you put a sheet of paper on top and you leave it there until everything is dry, you will be 100% sure that you pick up everything from the plate. The only thing is that you have to be patient to do that. So what I like to do is work on 2 or 3 gel plates at the same time. When I do gel printing for myself, I just have a couple of plates out, and I go from one to the other, because I don't want to sit around and wait until I can pull my paper from the plate before I can move on to the next one. Also, what you can also do, as you can see, I'm rolling off my brayer on my scrap paper in between colors. But if you have a second gel plate next to this one, then you can also roll it off on your second gel plate, create some texture in there too, build up layers, and then when you like it, put a wet layer of paint on top and pull it. And then you have a bonus print from paint that you would normally roll off on your scrap paper. So that's a little extra then. I think this is should be dry enough to add a layer of paint. So what should I do? Should I use paint or the matte medium? What do you say?
Actually just asked, what about using a gel medium instead? Would it work more similarly to the paint as it is thicker?
I'm not sure. I think that I just answered that question because I just told about the matte medium, which is a gel medium. So but I prefer the fluid one. So you also have gel medium that is soft body or heavy body. Oh, I get it. So if you would use a soft body gel medium instead of the liquid one, I prefer the liquid one because I don't know, it's the texture of the gel medium that I can't really explain it. It's because it's so thick and you really want to roll it out very thin. But I can totally think that that is a very personal thing, that a matter of preference. You can definitely use a gel medium because that is similar to an acrylic paint. But yeah, what can I say? I'm just a big fan of the Liquitex matte medium for all kinds of stuff. I always have a big bottle around and I just fill my small one when it's empty. And yeah, it's just my favorite. But of course, that's totally personal, because I can also imagine that there are people who would prefer to use a golden gel medium or a fluid matte medium from like the one from Deco Art is actually really a nice one too. But for years I've been using the Liquitex and I haven't found one that I like better than the Liquitex. So that's just my go-to matte medium for all kinds of stuff, for gluing stuff down, for gel printing, and for how do you call it, create a layer on top, because you want something to be not water reactive anymore. How do you call it? Fixate, like fixate something that is water reactive. If you want to fixate something that is water reactive, for instance, you made a background using watercolors or stamping ink that is like a distress ink or something like that, and you want to work on top with other products and you don't want them to reactivate, then you can just put a thin layer of the matte medium on your gel plate. And that is really, I really like doing that, because then you will not move the ink or the watercolor paint that's on your paper. If you would apply a matte medium on top of a watercolor background with a brush, then you would reactivate the watercolor and the colors would start to run and smear and stuff like that. But if you put it on your gel plate, it doesn't move the colors. So you can put your background on top of the gel medium, let it dry, and then add another very thin layer and maybe even 2 more layers, and you will have a completely sealed background that you can just put water on top, but it will not reactivate anymore. So matte medium from Liquitex is definitely one of my most used products in my studio. And here we go. Here's my print, and you can see very nicely how it also picked up the colors that were already on the plate, my leftover colors from my previous session, like the pink was already on the plate. Here is some green. This line here at the side is also, and I think even the yellow on this side is from paint that was already on the plate. And I can even see here that I think this plate was actually used in my previous Michael's class where I worked, no, in my Date with Gelli class where I worked with fabric, because there's a fabric texture here in the red pink paint, which was obvious still on the plate. So I really like doing that because the prints are then not so clean and yeah, especially clean. I really like the more distressed look. So that's why I prefer to use a plate that's not completely clean anymore. Let's try another one. And okay, I'm going to use one that I just made today. I made this one, right? Yeah, I made this one. And see how that one works out. Let me see. This is a nice color. And I think I need some darker colors. And then I'm actually going to use another color to pick up the print afterwards instead of using white. And I want some open areas also in this print. So I'm not going to cover my plate completely, because if you cover your plate completely, there will be no open areas. And I really like it if you use another color to pick up your print, that it's actually really showing that color in your print because there are open areas. In this one, you can see better that I'm transferring the color from one area to another area, because I'm now working on a almost clean plate. So there's no distraction from the colors that are already there. And this is also a really organic shape that I like. Just random circles. It really doesn't have to be something complicated or something difficult. But of course, now I again have to wait for the paint to dry, because as I said, I want an extra color, using an extra color to pick up the print. So this needs to be dry. So maybe in the meantime, we can look at a couple of prints that I already made. So here's one with some larger leaves, and I think it's this one that I used here. And this is also one with organic circles, probably. No, I think it's this one. Not sure, but not really that important either. I also have one that I want. Oh, this is also one with that with the circles, and as you can see, how much of a difference the color choice makes. So you get a totally different feel of the print if you use different color combinations or color schemes. I think I also had one in here that I wanted to show you where I combined. Here's also one with the, so this is the same as this one, but then in another color combination. It's quite a difference, right? Oh, and I think this is also one that didn't turn out too well, but still is a fun background. And here I have combined one of the textures with using one of Gelli Arts mini tools to create the stripes. So of course, as with any other tool you use on the gel plate, you don't have to use just these tools together. You can combine them with any any other tools you want to, of course. Here also combination of ready bought texture plates and the hot glue texture, and this is even a texture that I created with craft foam. So you can do all kinds of fun stuff with these, and this looks quite right to me. And I want to add some yellow and some magenta, and I want some lighter pink. Let me see, like a baby pink, a rose pink. And maybe even a tiny little bit of white to make the magenta a little bit brighter. As you know, it can't be too much color for me. But as I showed you in the journal just, you can also go with a monochromatic color scheme or any color combination you like. You really don't have to go wild like me. Okay. Okay, are there any questions right now that I can answer? Can those hot glue stamps be used without the gel plate? I think they could. I think you could use them as stamps by applying paint to them. Why not try, right? I would have to roll out some paint with my brayer to apply it to the texture, because I can't put paint straight on there, right? But I can use my brayer. And then, of course, you will probably never get the same crisp, perfect print as you would with rubber stamps, because it doesn't bend. It's just like very sturdy, but it will probably release the paint and give some kind of texture. Yeah. And I didn't put a lot of paint on there. Of course, you could add a little bit more paint on there, but I really like how that turned out. So yeah, you can use it as a stamp. We just proved it. And why doesn't my paint adhere to the paper? I need a little bit more information. What do you mean when you try to pull the print, or and are you pulling a print straight away, or are you pulling a print with the extra layer of paint? So you have paint on the gel plate, place cardstock on it, and then when you pick up the paint, nothing is on the paper. Is that right? Correct. Okay. So the only thing that I can imagine, if you have paint on the plate and you put paper on top and it's not pulling up any paint, is that the paint is already dry on your plate. So you waited too long before adding the paper. It can be that your paint is drying really fast. And that can be because of the quality of the paint, but that could also be because of the circumstances in your room. Maybe you have a really warm or really dry air in your room, which makes your paint dry really fast. In that case, you could either go for a paint like a golden open paint, so you have more time to work, or you could do the technique where you let everything dry and then roll out one layer of paint and put the paper straight on top. Or what you could also do, and that's what I do when it's like really hot here, I use a slow dry blending medium, and this one is also from Liquitex, but they are available in different brands. And this makes your paint dry slower, so you have more time to work. And normally when you paint, you would mix it in a cup with your paint. But when you do gel printing, it's really easy. You just add a few drops to your plate, roll it out so you have an even layer of the slow dry medium. Then you put your paint on top and roll out the paint, and your paint will automatically be mixed with the slow dry medium that's already on your plate, and you have a nice even mixture of your medium and your paint, and then you have a really nice paint that stays wet a little bit longer. So here's the next one, and you can really see the yellow in the middle. That's the open area where I only transferred paint from the sides to the middle using the texture, but there was no paint there. So there's a lot of ways that you can play with your textures or combine your textures. Let me do one more on tissue paper. Let me see if there are. Okay, so you thought that your paint had to be dry. No, you cannot pull any dry product from the plate. You always need a wet layer. So whatever product you use on your plate, as soon as it is dry, you need that extra layer. I'm going to pull a print with the tissue paper. I just want to show you, not specifically for the hot glue textures, but just in general. Tissue paper is really fun to print on. As I said, it will totally sink into your background when you use it on already printed or painted papers. And especially with the tissue paper, it's really nice if you have these open areas, and then also keep them open in your print, because then when you apply them to your background and the tissue paper where there's no paint will turn translucent, you will actually see the background shining through the background that was already there. So for this one, I'm going to work a little bit faster and try to pull it straight away before the paint dries. So I'm not going to use that extra layer, because if I use an extra layer of paint, obviously all my tissue paper would be completely covered with paint, and I don't want that. So if my paint happens to dry too fast anyway, then instead of using a layer of paint, I would use that matte medium to pull the print. So I still would have those open areas. So I'm just going to real quick create some texture, because I want my paint to be still wet, so I can pull it straight away. But even with tissue paper, if you're careful, you could leave it on the plate to dry before pulling it. Tissue paper is much stronger than you think. You have to make sure when you work with tissue paper, I always say that with any paper, that you need to work with thin layers, but with tissue paper that is even more important, because if you use too much paint on the tissue paper and it kind of like soaks through the paper, then your paper gets really wet and then it's more likely to tear. But if you use thin layers of paint, you can actually very easily pull prints on tissue paper. So as you can see, and you can also already see on my hand how thin the paper is, and imagine how well that would work on a background and totally blend in. And then when you go over it with your hand, you would not even feel that it's there. And I would try and show you how that looks when you glue it down, but then I need it to be dry, because if the paint is still dry and I go over this with a matte medium, then I would totally smear all the paint around. So I'm just going to dry real quick, and I can't promise that it's dry enough, but I just want you to see how the purple of my cleanup paper will show through that in the open areas of the tissue paper.
Very good. Dawn just asked, can this technique be used to make an impression in resin?
I don't know. I can't give an honest answer on that, because I never work with resin. So I don't know how resin would react. I suppose that if you try and it doesn't work, then you lose your resin. But I would say go for it and just try. I don't know. I think worked with resin once, and I have no idea if this would work. Oh, what is the? Let me see if I understood the question right. You mean pulling a print with resin, or what exactly is the question? Because I'm not really sure. If the resin has set for a few hours and is tackier than it is at first, for it's possible. Oh, so you mean actually creating a texture in the resin with the hot glue stamps?
Dawn
That's
just
the question,
responded,
right?
yes. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I can't answer that because I've never tried. So first I put a layer of matte medium on my background. And then I also put matte medium on top. And as you can see, the tissue paper turns completely translucent in the areas where there's no paint. And when it dries, it shows even less. So the purple of the background is completely shining through this area where there was no paint, and it's a little bit wrinkly yet still because it's still wet. But when you dry it, it will flatten out, and it will be even smoother than this. Okay, you could make the print on tissue paper and embed it in the resin. That's a really good idea, Katie. That I think that would really work. I would love to work with resin because I think it looks wonderful, but I already have so many hobbies. I really can't have another one. Okay, are there any more questions about the hot glue or the textures or anything right now? I don't think there are. So if you have any questions later and you don't remember how it went, then within 48 hours there will be the recording of this class will be available on the Michael's website and also on the Gelli Arts YouTube channel. I will be back next month and I'm not sure yet what exactly I'm doing, but I think it's on May 8th that I will be back. And I hope you enjoyed today, and I hope I will see you again then. And have a lovely day wherever in the world you are, and see you next time. Bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.